I found medicine to be more useful in a more gritty game, lacking any casters with healing. Medicine, I think medicine is valuable in that you can stabilize someone. It's not a skill. Should we start with medicine? You guys want to start with medicine? Let's talk about medicine. Let's talk about medicine. So medicine, the primary use, in my opinion, for medicine is to stabilize a creature. This is so valuable. This is so very valuable. The problem is you don't have to roll it very much, but when you do roll it, it's very important. I think medicine is okay where it is. I think medicine should be like the standard for other skills to look at. Like this is what we should use. So when you think about it, you may not have to use medicine very often, but it's always valuable. As long as you're going to be fighting something and you run the risk of getting knocked unconscious, medicine is going to be valuable. I don't think that needs to be adjusted at all. I think medicine is fine right where it's at. Medicine is also good if you find a corpse and you want to know if you want to determine how something died. I think medicine is a great way. You can use medicine to identify poisons. So I think identifying poisons, stabilizing dead creatures, and determining how a creature dies makes medicine just fine. I think that's got a nice little place. I would want to take. So when I'm drawing up a character, if I'm drawing up a support character, I'm almost certainly going to take medicine specifically for stabilizing a creature. Because if I can save a healing potion and stabilize somebody with a medicine check, I'm going for it. But I'd have to check the medicine kit and the healer feat to be sure. But yeah, I think medicine is solid. All right, so athletics. Athletics, I think, is amazing on its own. This is used for climbing and swimming outside of combat. If you have to climb a tree or swim in a lake, a DM can easily incorporate athletics by just adding an obstacle that needs to be climbed or a body of water that you need to swim in. In combat, athletics is used to grapple, which is huge. So athletics has a lot going on. I don't think you need to make any adjustments to this. If you want to find a use for athletic, like if you're a DM and you want to incorporate athletics, climbing, swimming, grapple, athletics is always going to have a place. Athletics is always worth the proficiency. Acrobatics, on the other hand, is a little bit tough. Acrobatics is balancing on a tightrope. It's stabilizing yourself on difficult terrain. Acrobatics, I would say, is a low tier skill to take. This actually could turn into a tier list. Acrobatics, the big use for acrobatics is escaping a grapple. My problem with acrobatics, or the way that I would incorporate more uses for acrobatics, would be also escaping being tied up, escaping bondage, escaping like anything that requires your body to wiggle out of a situation. If you're tied up with a rope, if you get tangled up in vines, if you're grappled, I think acrobatics is more valuable if you use it. If you trap your players physically more often, maybe in combat, and require acrobatics to escape. So maybe add more traps to your game that will entangle your party, and make sure those traps happen in combat. Otherwise, it's just an obstacle in the way, or a trap that maybe shoots arrows, and then there's like some stickiness that causes you to require an acrobatics to escape. So here's an idea. Here's just a ballpark idea. You're moving through a hallway. There's some kind of sticky trap on the floor. The walls have those arrow traps, that just shoot arrows. So as your party's moving through, they may get stuck in the stickiness and then get shot at by arrows. They don't have to roll anything specifically to dodge the arrows. The arrows just target their AC. But they do have to roll in acrobatics to escape the stickiness, whether it be a rope, vines, web, whatever. They have to escape the stickiness with an acrobatics and then move. You can incorporate a lot of anything that stops your player's mobility. You can have acrobatics be the way out. That's how I would incorporate more acrobatics. The description for a net requires a strength check. Yeah, I think that's to break the net. I would also allow acrobatics for that. That would be a good way to change it as well. Stealth. Stealth needs nothing. Stealth is already one of the strongest skills in the game. You really don't need to add anything to it. This needs nothing. Don't change this. If anything, I wouldn't say nerf it, but don't change it. Just leave stealth the way it is. It's such a great skill on its own. You never need to make any adjustments to this. It's an S tier. You are right. It is an S tier skill. This will never not be a good skill to take. Survival. Survival is another one. Survival can be used for tracking. Anytime you're out in the wild, anytime you're traveling, if you want to incorporate more survival checks, or if you want more uses for survival, if you want to make sure your survivalists are getting the most out of it, foraging is a good one. Hardly anyone uses like eating though, like the food rules. Survival will obviously really shine in a survival type game where hunger is an issue. But if you're just running your everyday game, you can use survival to track. Survival would be the best to identify tracks, to figure out which way the tracks are going, and to figure out what left those tracks. That alone, I think, makes survival worth it. If you allow your players to approach a dungeon and then, all right, if the player says I'm looking around for tracks, like, okay, roll it. You can set a DC for determining where the tracks lead, and you can set a DC for what left those tracks. Survival, I think, is good on its own. Animal handling. Now, I have played a lot of D&D. Is it handle animal? It used to be handle animal. Now it's animal handling. If you hear me say handle animal, I mean animal handling. It used to be called handle animal. I have played a lot of D&D games, and I feel like animal handling is not done well enough. It may be me. I might use animal handling too much, but let me tell you, animals are awesome. And animals are everywhere. So one piece of advice that I have for you, that I try to do as much as possible. If you watch my D&D streams, if you watch my D&D games where I DM, you'll see me do this a lot. I want to do it every time I describe a room. Every time I set the scene for where the players are, I add some kind of animal to the scene. Some kind of animal to the scene. It doesn't have to be something crazy. You don't have to add a T-Rex to every forest, every campsite. Add some kind of animal. The reason you do this is for world building, for one. You can just add a unique animal. If you want to keep it simple, you set up camp for the night. There's birds and squirrels in the trees. Boom. Done. That's all you have to say. But you can build on that. You can add some like crazy, unique, exotic animal. You could say like there's a unique beetle with like a red strip down its back that's unique to this region. It's pushing a ball of dirt around, you know? Add unique animals. And then have animal handling will always have a use. Another reason that I add animals to every scene is because there are a lot of class features and race features that interact with animals specifically. Speak with animals. If you set an animal in every scene, the players will always have a use for speak with animals. They will always, so that scene that I gave earlier with the beetle, I'm going to cast speak with animals. I'm going to ask the beetle if there's anything dangerous around. Oh, great. That makes speak with animals so good. I love characters that deal with animals. Speak with animals, animal friendship. Forest gnomes have the ability to communicate simple ideas with animals. Furbolgs also can speak with animals. There's so many different features that deal with animals specifically. This skill is amazing. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. If you're a DM, put animals in every single scene. Unless they're like in the void of space, describe an animal, put them somewhere. Put a beetle in the campsite, put a spider in the corner. If they're in a cave, put a spider in the corner. If they're in the desert, put a scorpion under a rock. Describe a lizard on the wall. A squirrel in the tree, a bird singing. A cat, if they're in town, a cat runs by. Anything. You can do so much with this. There are so many spells that deal with animals. Just do it. Just do it. Put more animals in the scene. Put an animal in every scene. Unless it just makes zero sense, like the vacuum of space, or you're on the moon or something, or you're in the elemental plane of fire, and put an animal in every scene. And even then, you could be like, there's a fire lizard or something crawling around. A space whale. If you're in the vacuum of space, there's a space whale. I don't know. I like adding animals to every scene because there's so many things that deal with animals. And they're great. They make great NPCs. If you awake, like you can give an animal a personality. You don't have to go crazy with it. If they awaken an animal, if they cast speak with animals, boom, you've got another NPC for them to interact with. You can add a voice, you can add a personality, you can add a quest. Example, we set up camp. All right, you set up camp, yada, yada. The trees are brown. The weather's nice. There's a spider in the tree building a web. Okay, I want to cast speak with animals. I'm going to ask the spider, is there anything going on? What's around here? The spider's like, hey, what's up, bud? I'll tell you, there's goblins set up in a cave nearby, not far from here. I don't know if you can go that far with animal handling. I got to check animal or speak with animals again. But they can communicate like hostiles north. I get a little carried away with it, I will admit. But by the book, they can say hostiles north or hostiles in that direction. Okay, moving on. Sleight of hand. I don't know how to make this good. Sleight of hand is for pickpocketing specifically. If you have a character that takes sleight of hand, give them commoners to steal from. Give them commoners to take to pickpockets. Come up with a loot table. So here's what you need to do. If a player takes sleight of hand proficiency, there's two tables that I want you to come up with. What happens when they get caught, and what do they find in the pockets? So have a little loot table. They can find like a little doll. They can find they can have a really rare or really low chance of finding a magic. Maybe put 1% chance of finding a magic item. That'd be sick. Could you imagine, like, especially if you roll it in front of them? Especially if you roll this in front of them. Tell them that you have a chart. You may even show them. So if you have a sleight of hand chart, what I would personally do is show the chart to the player. I would say, here's the chart. It's a percentile. You have one in 100. There's 100 things on the die roll. If you get under 20, something bad happens. If you get 100, you find a magic item. Just show them the chart. All right, here you go. You can have some fun with that. And like, they can't just spam it. Like, okay, what's in their pocket? What's in their pocket? What's in their? You just give them one a day. Like, okay, you're in town. You're pickpocketing. Boom. Give them a little bit of extra loot. These are your knowledges. Treat all of these the same. Arcana, history, nature, religion. These are all the same. So incentivize them to do this? Yeah. I mean, that's the point of the skill. Would push PCs to use their chosen skills more? Incentivize them? Absolutely. That's the point of the skill. Incentivize them. Incentivize them to do it. If they get caught, they get a slap on the wrist, maybe get a fine, you could fine them. Put that on the chart. Put that on your chart. If you create a chart for your pickpocketer, you could say, okay, this is what you can get from pickpocketing. I'm not going to tell, and you can keep it as vague or specific as you like. You could put something, you could write on the chart something bad. You don't have to be specific. 90 to 100, something magical. Right? You do something like that. And then you go like 21 to 89, some coin. Boom. I just made your chart for you. Show this to your rogue or whoever's pickpocketing. Be like, here you go. And then set a DC. Maybe DC 15. DC 15. All right. Roll your sleight of hand. All right. You got a 15. Roll a percentile. Something bad. Some coin. Something magical. Oh, you failed? You get caught. You get fined. Boom. Super easy. Done. Arcana, history, nature, religion. These are knowledges. Treat them all the same. This can be used to identify creatures. You can use religion or arcana to identify undead. History to identify goblins, bugbears, monstrosities, animals, etc. Or nature's for animals. Nature would be for animals, fae. There's a list in Tasha's. Let me pull up Tasha's. There's a really good list in Tasha's that I recommend you use for this specifically. It's what I use for this. Tasha's parlaying with monsters. Here we go. So aberrations would be Arcana. Beast would be nature or survival or animal handling. I would just do nature for beast. I've already talked about how good. Animal handling should be to control the beast. Survival's got other uses. Celestial is Arcana religion. Construct is Arcana. And then here's your list. Elemental. There's a lot of Arcana in nature. You got some religion in there. History for giants and humanoids. I wouldn't put survival in there, but that's up to you. If you want to give survival more uses, if you feel like my explanation for survival didn't have enough stuff, throw it in there. Another great thing to do with skill checks is to have 2 skills per check. If you ask for a skill check, give them an option between 2 skills. The only reason that I don't like doing this is because if you have what's really great about having every skill mean something is that when your party's making their characters, they can say, okay, I've got nature covered if you'll cover history. I've got sleight of hand covered if you'll take medicine. That way, if your party gets together and makes sure every skill's covered, you've done your job. I've done my job as a DM. If all the players get together and be like, all right, we need to make sure all the skills are covered, then I've done my job as a DM. It's great to give them options. Like, okay, do you want to identify these ancient infernal runes? Okay, roll me an Arcana or religion. Your choice. You don't think that's metagamey if they try that? I would much rather my players metagame their skills like that than to step on each other's toes. I would much rather one player go, okay, I'm going to specialize in acrobatics if you specialize in athletics. Or let me rephrase. I would much rather my players go, I'm going to specialize in history if you specialize in nature. I would much rather them do that than, okay, we need a nature check. Well, I've got a +3. Well, I've got a +3. So who's our nature guy? I don't want them butting heads on who the nature guy is. And one player, more times or more often than not, one player will relent and be like, okay, you can be the nature guy. That's fine. But then that player's effectively picked a useless skill. Almost every single skill here, almost every one of them, if you have 2 players covering a skill, they can give each other advantage. If you have 2 players proficient in medicine, they can give the other one advantage. That's fine. Athletics, survival is a good one. Animal handling for sure, you can give advantage. Sleight of hand. Knowledges are the only one that's like, can we help each other with this one? I'm okay with it. I need to be okay with it because you can discuss things. I might change that. In my games, I usually do knowledges specifically. You can't help, but maybe I should, but only if you're proficient. Same thing with these. You can help each other. This gives the opportunity for 2 players to take the same proficiency in a skill and then help each other out with that skill. Metagaming can be useful to a point. Yeah, because D&D is a cooperative game, and I don't want my players stepping on each other's toes. I want each player to have a thing that they do and that's their thing and they stand out. I don't want players butting heads over who's doing what. So I'm totally okay with metagaming the skill proficiencies as long as it makes sense for their character in order to cover their bases. Okay with it. Perception, investigate, insight. Oh, no, excuse me. I skipped over. Persuasion, intimidate, deception are all social skill checks. If you're trying to convince somebody to do something, it's persuasion. Super easy. If you're trying to scare them into doing something, maybe you're literally interrogating, maybe you've beaten up the gang of goblins, you've captured one of them and now you're trying to get information out of them, intimidate. If you're playing good cop, bad cop, you got persuasion, you got intimidate. If you're trying to lie, deception. These are all super useful. These are all dependent on your players. As a DM, you can put these skill checks in here as much as you like, but really it's going to come down and have this conversation with your players. If you take these skills, these are up to you to use. You have to be upfront with this one. I want to try to persuade this person to do this. I'm going to try and intimidate him to do this. Lying, obviously. Deception is really funny. I've noticed that players do not like to lie to NPCs. So deception is really tough. Sometimes they do. Like, obviously, sometimes they will. You know, they're trying to bluff their way past a guard or something. But deception, players don't like to lie. And it's interesting. These skills don't need any changes, in my opinion. Neither do the knowledges. I think these are useful in their own right. Don't need to make any changes. Insight, perception, investigation. Perception is a very, very powerful skill. It is arguably the most powerful skill in the game. You can do. I've seen DMs run entire games with perception checks every 5 minutes. When I first started playing D&D, I swear to you, perception was the skill to take. If you didn't take, when I first started playing D&D, the people that taught me D&D, if you were drawing up a character, and I was playing wizards at this time. I was really big into wizards. They did not have perception on their list, which sucked because I'm telling you, these DMs, it was a perception check for everything. Don't do this. Don't be that DM. Do not be the DM that's like, okay, roll a perception. Okay, you don't see anything. 5 minutes later, okay, roll a perception. Okay, you see this. Don't do that. Perception is always double S tier. Yes, perception is probably the best skill in the game. No matter, like, it's just perception's used to notice stealth. Perception's used to notice anything that's trying to be hidden. You use it to search rooms. A lot of the times I will allow investigation. Like if a party member says, okay, I'm searching the room. Okay, you can roll a perception or investigation, your choice. I almost always use these two interchangeably. Perception's wisdom, investigation's intelligence. Insight is used a lot as a lie detector. I don't mind it in my games. I get why some people don't like it in their games. It really depends on how much you want to lie, how much information you want to give to your players. I like giving tons of information to my players. I like my players knowing everything and being able to make informed tactical decisions based off of all the information that's available. I love that. That's fun. This makes insight very useful in my games. Some people don't like that. I've played with DMs that will like keep everything hidden and you're just kind of lost. Like, oh, what the hell's going on here? Different strokes, different styles. Insight is used to determine the demeanor of an NPC that's like communicating. Body language. It's used to read body language. The mileage of insight is really going to come down to the thing you need to remember about insight is there to give information. The purpose of this skill is to provide information to the party. The purpose of this skill is to give information. If you ask for an insight check, you're doing so that you can provide the player information. Whether that be this NPC is lying, this NPC is clearly lying to you, or this NPC is clearly telling the truth. This could also be this NPC is clearly nervous about something, or this MP is definitely hiding something. I don't know. That like anything that you can pick up from body language can be used for insight. In response to that story, I think it was a Jenny D video that said there should be no roll if there's no consequence for failing the check. Oh my gosh. Jenny D coming in with the absolute best advice. There should be no roll if there is no consequence for failure. I agree 100%. It's actually another video I got coming up real soon. And that's all the skills. Listen, I know some of you want me to cover performance. You want me to tell you a good way to use performance. There isn't one. I don't understand this skill. Performance is for putting on a show. What do you get out of putting on that show? I don't know. I don't use performance at all. I think there's specific class features that use performance, like bards have specific class features. But performance to me, you know what? Here's what you're going to do. Here's what you do with performance. I think here's what I'm going to do. Remember how I said with sleight of hand to make a chart? I think you should do that with performance. I think performance and sleight of hand should be together. I'm going to put those together. Performance and sleight of hand are skills that you can use in town or away from dungeons at the hub. Skills that you can use at the hub in order to add additional loot, like just another loot table. That's how I would use those. That's about the best use I can think of. So the player can say, I'm going to do a performance. I'm going to try and make some coin. You can show them the chart, the same chart or a different chart, similar to your sleight of hand chart, and roll off of that. Performance is probably the bottom tier skill. That is what I do with skills. That is what I recommend you do with skills. I think everything that we covered just now is a good way to use skills and make them worth the proficiency. Because when you're building a character and you're trying to make a choice of what skills you want to be proficient in, you want the skills you choose to be useful. And I think what we just covered here is a good way to make all of these skills worth their proficiency. At least that's what I hope we accomplished. Make sure if you're in the chat right now watching live, leave a comment or let me know in the chat. If you're watching the VOD, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. How you would change some of these skills. If you added new ones, took away, or improved on them in any way, let me know. And let me know what you think of what we covered here.